It's time for another Out and About with Jamie Grout podcast, and this time around we'll be talking with Iowa radio legend Van Harden about his book, Jesus The Prequel. But first, a word from our sponsors, including Ryan's Tire and Auto on First Avenue in Newton. I'm so proud to know Ryan and have him service my vehicles. He does a great job, and so does his crew. And the thing about Ryan's is not only do they have great service and great prices there at Ryan's, but he's so community involved. They sponsor all kinds of community events, and this time around, we're talking about how they're sponsoring the United Way of Jasper County Voices of Inspiration, including Matt Stutzman, who's coming to Newton. That'll be February 27th. Mike Chapman, he's a wrestling guy. You might know about him on March 6th. Ernie Schiller and Nathan Unsworth on March 12th. A guy I know because he used to be in the radio business, and now you see him on TV from time to time. And when you hear woohoo and you've got a winner on the lottery machines, that's Terry Rich, who will be speaking on March 27th, and Marianne Owen on April 10th. And again, thanks to the gang at Ryan's Tire and Auto for sponsoring that. Also, another sponsor, Tony Pesca with Iowa Realty. She found the right house for Little Red and myself, and she'll find the right house for you too. If you're wanting to buy or sell a house, give Tony a call at this number at 641-417-8484, 641-417-8484. And make your loved one's day by enrolling them in Willowbrook, a Wesley Life adult day center. Willowbrook on the Park Center campus provides a welcoming and stimulating environment that allows participants to maintain independence while receiving support and encouragement. Social engagement, companionship, and enriching opportunities are provided to give participants a purposeful and fulfilling day. Willowbrook's person-centered care includes exercise focused on total health and well-being, and programming that includes music therapy, pet therapy, guest speakers, outings, and much more. If you'd like to learn more about Willowbrook, call 641-791-4500 to arrange a tour. And Newton, Des Moines East, KOA, Alta House.
Dinner, Death, and Diamonds. Join Iowa Chef of the Year Aaron Holt from Doolittle Farm and the team at Alta House Event Center for an unforgettable dinner and murder mystery experience in Newton on Saturday, February 15th. This Valentine's Day, step into the world of Regency-era elegance and intrigue. The event includes an exquisite farm-to-table dinner from Chef Aaron Holt, a signature drink ticket and full bar available, delectable chocolates to savor, and diamond play, an opportunity to try your hand for a genuine diamond. You'll be swept up in a night where love, scandal, and murder collide. Join us on February 15th at the Death and Diamonds Murder Mystery Dinner Experience at Alta House Event Center in Newton. Act now, as tickets are limited and selling quickly for this one-of-a-kind event. More information is available at deathanddiamonds.com.
This Out and About with Jamie Grout podcast is with Van Harden. You might know him from WHO Radio, longtime broadcaster. He has won 5 Marconi Awards, which is the highest honor you can get in radio. And I hold Van in high regard. He's one of my radio heroes, and I always enjoy chatting with him. And I talked to him a while back about some of the books that he's written and also about his radio career. But I do want to touch on that a little bit, Van. But
I'm yours. After that intro, I'll talk about whatever you want me to talk about.
Okay. Well, here's the deal, Van. You were not only the morning guy at WHO with Bonnie and Connie and Patty, but also program director for a long time. Now, we're both radio guys, and we know being program director is a high-pressure job.
Yep.
You have to perform. You have to have ratings. Ratings bring in revenue, and you told me a long time ago, one thing these people understand, the owners of the radio station, is money.
Advertisers and listeners. That's
Right.
I thought, people say, well, what if you get fired? Well, I'm going to please the listeners, And if I can deliver the listeners and the advertisers, there's not a general manager in the world that's going to fire me because that's what they want.
Well, there you go. And that's why you've never been fired. You're the only radio guy I know who's never been fired. You know how many times I've been fired?
No.
8 times.
Is that right?
8 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I probably could have learned a lot more if I would have been, but but I didn't.
You'd have been able to relate to those people who have been, you know,
that's right.
and because it's hard not to be a little bitter about that, and I try to overcome that. But my question is about your faith. And I don't know if everybody knows this, but a few people do. I think there are many that don't. You have a very strong faith. And my first question is, how has that helped you in your radio career? How did that help you get past not only the high points, but the low points in your radio career?
Well, I think it's helped me understand life more, because a lot of life doesn't make sense. As you pointed out with getting fired that many times, I'm sure there's a lot of them you say, wait a minute, you know, that doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. And it helps you see a big picture, just like Patrick Mahomes. They interviewed him after the game yesterday, obviously, and he talked about his faith. Yeah. Why? Because as big as the Super Bowl is and as big as million-dollar contracts are, faith really overrides that. And I always appreciate people that will express that sincerely and tell them that's what's true. Because in the first book that I wrote, The Life in the Purple Wedge, it describes for a Christian how you live in 2 worlds at the same time. Now, to most people, that doesn't add up, 2 worlds at the same time. But I drew around a circle that was red, and on the left side of the circle I had a black dot, and on the right side of the circle I had a black dot, and the one on the left was the day you were born. And what did you have to do with that? Nothing. It just happened. Mm-hmm. And then you're going through, the circle is life, you're going through this red circle, and the reason I made it red is because there's a lot of things that are antagonistic and difficult and tragic, and there's a lot of good things too, but you're going through the circle till you get over to the other dot where you die. And so for a person that's, I happen to be a Christian. I have lots of friends that are Jews and other things too, and I respect that, but I just, I trust the Bible, and I've been a Bible student for years.
And teacher.
And teacher, yeah. And the more I read it, the more eye-opening it is to me every day, even after 40 years of teaching that thing. But you're going through this red circle, and you're going through all these trials and tribulations, and when you decide you're going to become a Christian and you accept Christ, all of a sudden there's a big blue sheet that comes over the red circle, and it starts right when you make that decision. Now, for some people, they may be 10, they may be 50, they may be 80, they may be on their deathbed, but the blue sheet goes over that red circle at whatever point that is, and then so you have this unusual thing in between the red and the blue. You got this blue and red plus blue equals what? Purple. Mm-hmm. So there's a wedge on your chart there. Welcome to life in the purple wedge. You live in 2 worlds at the same time. And when life is difficult, and it is for me like everybody else, I look at that map and I look at the red part of it and I say, yeah, that's very red. What's happening right now is very red. It's not very blue as in God's kingdom. So whenever you go through things, it's coming from one or the other. It's either the red or the blue. But since you live in this world, you haven't died yet. You live in that purple wedge where you're experiencing both of those. And that's where you have to put those into perspective. That's what Patrick Mahomes was saying. He knows about the blue kingdom, and he knows he still lives here on earth. And someday, Christians, all of us will die. We'll hit that black dot on the right side of the map, and then we won't be in the red one anymore. We'll be totally in the blue. And man, what I read, that's going to be glorious. No more tears, no more death.
Well, I remember a couple years back, maybe, you spoke at our Newton Rotary Club, and you were getting ready to have a stent put in.
Yes.
And you said, if the stint doesn't work out, I still win. And that made an impact on me. It did work out, thank God, thank the Lord. But you said you believe everything that's in the Bible, which leads me to my question. What is the name of your new book, Van?
It's called Jesus The Prequel.
Okay.
I was a believer for a long time, and I thought I got it. And the more I studied, the more I read, the more I realized I didn't really get the Jesus thing. And
what do you mean by that?
well, that the whole reason for me writing this book is I see a lot of people who are non-Christians, and I like to tell them my story and why I think it's such a wonderful thing. In fact, it makes me wonder, if Jesus is so as great as we say he is, how come people aren't flocking to him from all over the world, you know? And so my burden was, I got to express this somehow. So I wrote this book, and I found that the church in general, the Church Universal, has done a pretty good job of teaching about 33 years. That's Jesus from Bethlehem until he was crucified and ascended. And that is, like they say, it's the greatest story ever told. I'm not knocking that at all, but I find that, at least for me, I started reading about Jesus before Bethlehem, and I didn't realize all this stuff, that he existed before Bethlehem. He even said, I was in the beginning with God, and I was God in the beginning.
Because in Christianity, there's the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost.
Right.
So it all ties together.
Right.
Right. And so do you derive the prequel from what God was doing before Jesus came to earth?
Well, first of all, Jesus said in the beginning, he was there with God, and he said, I was God. So that's where you get the Trinity thing, you know, who's God? Well, and that's hard for human beings to figure out too. How can three people be one God? I don't know, but it calls Jesus God, it calls the Father God, it calls the Spirit God. So what do you get out of that? Well, the only thing you can get is that the three persons are the one God.
Okay.
So you go back and look at that in the beginning. So he says, in the beginning I was there. Well, the beginning was a long time ago. The beginning of what? Well, it's probably the beginning of the earth.
Right.
Because God was there even before that, because he created it. So then if he was there in the beginning, and then we went through a long time in history, and then Jesus came as a baby in Bethlehem, but he says he was before that, then my question was, where was he? What did he look like? What did he do before he was born in Bethlehem? So I looked at a lot of different things. I looked at a lot of the quotes that Jesus gave himself. He talks about when he was, before he was born in Bethlehem. And so I've got all of those written down in the book so you can see what he says about it. And another thing is what people call Christophanies. A Christophany is an appearance of Jesus before Bethlehem. And that's just the Bible where it appears. It doesn't say, now this is Jesus. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace. You know, the king was mad at these guys because they didn't bow down and worship the image that he sent. So anybody that doesn't bow down and worship, we're throwing them in the fiery furnace. And so these guys who were assistants of his said, no, we're not doing that. And so he had a question and answer session with them, and he said, well, you've got to worship this, or I'm going to throw you in the furnace. And they said, no, we refuse to worship anybody but God. And it made him so mad, he heated up the furnace like 7 times as hot as it normally was. And it was so hot that it even killed some of the guys that were carrying them to throw them in.
Oh.
And so they throw them in the furnace, and there's this window in the furnace, and the king, to enjoy his vitriol, went over and looked in, and he says to his guards, "Hey, didn't we throw 3 guys in there?" And they said, "Yes, O king, we did." "Well, I see 4 guys. And so nobody could really explain that, except the king said, "All right, let them out." So they opened the door and let them out. They didn't have singed hair. They had no bruises, no burns or anything. And the king said, "I'm there with you." And it looked like an angel of God. And so a lot of people say that probably was Jesus. The more I read about it, I think it probably was too. But this is a long time before Bethlehem. And so the king says, "Well, all right, people of my country, I now give you a different order. Instead of worshiping this idol, you need to worship the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, because he came and he saved them." And so he said, "If you don't do that, I'm going to throw you into the fiery furnace." So the guy was nuts. I mean,
Sounds like
he
it.
clearly was
Yeah.
nuts. But one of the things that we can get out of this whole story is not only that, but that a lot of times you will get into very difficult, uncomfortable situations. And I think you'd have to agree, getting thrown into a fiery furnace, that's pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. So, and you and I can mention things we've been through in life, and we didn't like it. It was uncomfortable. And God did not save those 3 guys from the fiery furnace because they got thrown in. But he did save them from the heat. So, to me, the story is that, when you get in situations like that, God will be with you. He always promised. He said, "I'll never leave you. I'll always be with you." And there he was in the fiery furnace with them too. But anyway, this is a long-winded way of talking about Christophanies. There are places in the Old Testament where things happen, and there is what is called the angel of the Lord, and it looks like it's Jesus. And I was puzzled about that because I thought, well, now I read in the New Testament, there's angels there too. But when you read about the angel of the Lord in the Old Testament, it's the angel of the Lord. You will never see that phrase in the New Testament. There's an angel or a angel, So why did that change after Jesus came? Maybe it's because it was Jesus himself in the first place.
Yeah. Very interesting. I want to ask you a philosophical question, and I guess it's your aspect and your way of looking at the Bible. I've had people say in the past that the Old Testament and New Testament are contradictory in that.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that.
In the New Testament, Jesus says, "Turn the other cheek." In the Old Testament, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. What's your take on that, Van?
Well, it looks to me like the New Testament is the fulfillment of the Old Testament, because I don't know how many prophecies there are in the Old Testament that came true word for word in the New Testament. Just like, I think it's Isaiah that talks about the crucifixion of Jesus. It doesn't say it that way, but it talks about he had no stately form, and he didn't speak a word, which is all true, and they gambled for his clothes. How many was that? 700 years beforehand?
Oh, yeah.
Before it even happened, and all these things. So once you start looking at these things, it's miraculous. It even predicted where Jesus was going to be born. In the Old Testament, it says, "Oh, you Bethlehem, Ephrathah," I think it says, "from you will come a great king." And I'll tell you, the more I read and cross-reference, it's just mind-blowing. To me, it's mind-blowing. It really is.
Very interesting. Wow. And you did a lot of research on this. And did you find other instances besides the throwing the folks into the fire? Besides that, can you
Well, you think
expound
about it. How about Daniel in the lion's den? You know, here again, God didn't save him from the lion's den. They threw him in. But the next morning they opened it up. He walks out. Hi, King.
Yeah.
And so God didn't save him from the lion's den, but he saved him from the mouths of the lions. They didn't eat him. And
Right.
you and I both know they had that lion's den for a reason, and they made him hungry for a reason.
So in other words, Jesus will not keep you from a situation leading into a situation that it looks like it's going to be bad, but will save you from that situation. Right? That kind of your thoughts on this?
And you and I have a definition of good and bad, and God's definition of that, excuse me, may be a little bit different. For example, when the guys came out of the fiery furnace and the king says, worship their God. Well, that was good. And everybody did. But, you know, you may not think, well, this is great being in this furnace, you know. But God used it for, he always takes bad things and uses them for good.
Well, working at WHO is an answer to my prayer. It is an answer to my prayer because last May I was let go from a station I'd worked at for 16 years.
Yeah.
This spring it'll be 50 years in radio, and I always wanted to work at WHO, and so I had to be patient.
Yeah.
You know, it had to happen in its own time.
It worked out best.
It worked out for the best. I wanted to ask you another question, and I don't know if you ever addressed this in your Sunday school class or anything like that, but I've heard about Jesus's dead years. Is there anything more known about Jesus's dead years before he got crucified and, you know, when he was a child? Because there's this big gap in the Bible. I always wondered about that.
I don't think there are any dead years. He was in the beginning, and then he was born in Bethlehem. Well, he was alive that whole time. And
he was a carpenter, right?
Well, his father taught him how to be a carpenter, which a lot of people think that means he works with wood. But actually, in those days, carpenters did more stonework than they did woodwork. But anyway, yes, that's true. And the only time he died was when he was put on the cross and had that agonizing, horrible death, which, you know, when you watch the movies and see that, you think, come on, God, what are you thinking? This is not right. But he had a purpose in doing that. And even Jesus knew what was coming, and he said, hey, if I can get out of this, let this cup pass from me. I don't want to do that. But your will be done, not mine. So that has to be a goal for us. Are we willing to say that same thing when we're going through hard times? I don't like this. And you don't usually even have to tell God. He knows when you don't like stuff. But I don't like this, but maybe you're using it, so you're smarter than I am. Your will be done, not mine.
Yeah.
And usually it works out.
Wow, that's great. Your book sounds fascinating. I need to get a copy of it and read it.
I'll get you one.
Haven't done that yet. But you're making some appearances. In fact, you're going to have a book signing, at your house, right, Van?
Yeah, I live in the house where I was born and raised.
Okay.
And I'm the only guy I know that's lived in the same house 3 different times.
Wow.
I've known some guys that lived in that same house twice, but not 3 different times. So I've had a lot of places that wanted me to do book signings, and that's fine. Some of them I'm doing. But my wife and I were talking, and I said, you know, we ought to just open this up and I'll set the dining room table and let people come here and they can. I live in the oldest house in Adel, 1851, and so if they want to come in and I'll have both my books there and I can sign them if they want to purchase them. And she said, well, yeah. And I thought, you know, a lot of radio people would tell me, you're nuts. Letting the general public in your house. I said, no, I've always had a special relationship with these people
Yeah.
in Iowa, and I think it'll be just fine.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm going to do.
Okay, you have some other appearances coming up, and I know people can find that on your Van Harden website, but
Yeah.
as long as we're talking, why don't you go ahead and give a plug for where else you're going to be
Okay, well,
doing
let's
book
see here.
signings, Van.
On Wednesday the 12th at 3 p.m., I've been asked to do a podcast, but they're going to record it at 3 p.m. out in front of GameStop at Merle Hay Mall.
Okay.
Why? I don't know.
Is that with Jimmy Olsen?
Yeah.
Okay, I know
Yeah.
Jimmy.
Yeah, good guy. Let's see, and then the one that you were speaking of at my home is going to be Tuesday, February 18th, from 4 until 7 p.m. at my home, which is 1020 Rapid Street, RIPIDS, 1020 Rapid Street, Adel. And I don't know, there's a bunch more. I've got, you might be interested in, I've got doing one at Stepping Stones in Grinnell,
Okay, sure.
doing one at Stepping Stones in Marshalltown, and doing one at Stepping Stones Eagle's Nest in Oskaloosa. That's the 13th, 14th, and 15th that I'll be doing those. So,
Wow, busy man.
yeah, well, I'm glad that people are interested in this, and I wrote a chapter in the book. If you listen to my radio program and liked my stories, I got a couple of stories in there that relate to this whole thing that my children reminded me of. And I think you'll enjoy those stories. What I have found is that this book, after you read it and digest it, you will never look at the gospel message the same again. It's like putting on a pair of glasses. I know that happened for me. I thought I knew the gospel forward and backwards, and I do know it pretty well. But when you realize this guy, Jesus, that's in the Gospels, I kept saying, this is the same guy. Way back here before he's even born, every indication this is the same guy. And so you look at the Gospel, you look at those 33 years with a whole new set of glasses. It looks, and it's 2020.
Sure.
I think people will really enjoy it, and I hope they do anyway.
Well, Van, other than your book signings, I'm sure people can get your book there. How else is it available?
You can get it online at vanharden.com. That's Harden, vanharden.com. And that's just one of those, you click and they'll send it to you. And it's at Barnes & Noble. It's at Amazon. And I understand a lot of smaller bookstores are getting it now, too. And so it's available pretty much anywhere. You know, I thought about what was I going to name this book. When I was a kid, for some reason in school, I took Algebra 2 before I took Algebra 1. And it was a horrible fiasco. And so I went back and I took Algebra 1, and then everything was fine. I took Algebra, the prequel, and I thought, you know, we need a prequel for Jesus so they can understand it better, just like I understand algebra better now. But Star Wars had a prequel, and Dumb and Dumber had a prequel. Now they even got a TV show, NCIS Origins.
Yes.
That's a prequel, but that's how I came up with that idea.
Well, that's great. The book is called Jesus the Prequel by the one and only Van Harden.
And then there's a subtitle that says, and the incredible difference it makes in your life.
Yeah.
And I think it will if people really stop and read it. And I say I want to get this into, you know, this is just something that's been in my heart, and I got to get it out, so I wrote it. But I'd like to get it into the hands and the minds and the hearts and the souls of every person on the face of the earth.
Yeah.
Now, they can reject it if they want, but it definitely is something everybody ought to consider.
Well, I'm going to take a look at it and read it. Like you say, it's like putting on a new pair of glasses.
Yeah.
Against my life and,
Yeah.
and may change some things in my life, which would be just great. Van, not only that, but you're an inventor, a legendary broadcaster, and an author. So quite an accomplished man, and people would never know, but you're really not retired. I mean, you say retired technically from radio, but you are keeping busy all the time.
Well, I retired 50 years to the day that I cracked open my first microphone. And that was quite a, I was like, I can't believe I made it through 50 years and didn't get fired.
Yeah.
But back when I was here at WHO, I had a to-do list every day, and it was 4 pages long.
Oh my gosh.
And slowly but surely I would get them done. But now I have a to-do list, and it's 1 page long. The difference is, at work, it was all stuff other people said I had to have done. But when you're retired, you can make a to-do list and have whatever you want to do and whatever you think is important for you. And I usually go through a list once every 2-3 days, and I look back at it and say, yeah, that's good. I didn't have time to do that when I was working.
That's one of the things I like about doing my own podcast.
Yes.
Because I can be my own boss.
Yep.
And you know how it is in the radio business. We're going to use some lingo here, but if you want to do a trade with a business, you probably have to go to your superiors and say, hey, can I do this?
Oh, yeah.
Then you can you can decide these things all for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're doing now. So that's just great.
Although I will admit, some of the wild things we did on our morning show, I thought, should I be asking the management about this? And I didn't do it because I thought they might say no.
Yeah.
You know? And then they were almost always a success. So, oh boy, that was a great idea.
Like shooting golf balls at Mark Allen and him shooting golf balls at you.
Yeah.
While you,
He was wearing a suit of armor. Yeah. Oh, that was fun. There's so many fun moments.
Definitely. Have you ever thought about writing a book about your career in radio, Van?
Yes, in fact, I have one in the drawer that's pretty much written. And it's called, I don't know if I'll ever publish it or not, but it's called Dear Everyone. And it's letters to people that I had run-ins with. That sounds negative. It wasn't always. Run-ins with from my radio job, including Fidel Castro. Get a story about him. Including Rush Limbaugh, just a whole bunch of. Niall Kinnick is from Adel, Iowa, and I wrote a letter to him. Some of these people have been dead for a while, but I found it very therapeutic writing a letter to Niall Kinnick. I said, when I was a kid, I rode my bike on the brick streets of Adel, and I find myself wondering, did you do that too? And I think he probably did.
Sure.
I have a very unusual distinction. My father went to school with Niall Kinnick when he was in Adel. And then the Kinnicks moved to Omaha, where he went to Benson High School.
Okay.
And he had a classmate there named Grace Black, who was my mother.
Oh, really?
So my dad went to school with Niall Kinnick in Adel. My mom went to school with him in Omaha, the Benson Bunnies.
How about that?
Yeah. And I thought, that's kind of odd. I've got a lot of weird things about me. Babe Ruth came to my house one time.
Yeah. I remember you saying about that. And one thing I wanted to tell you about Rush Limbaugh is he has a connection to the Newton radio station.
Really?
Let me tell you about it real quick.
Yeah.
He's from Cape Girardeau, Missouri.
Yep.
His dad was a lawyer, and his dad had an investment in the radio station in Cape Girardeau. The majority ownership was by the Brandt brothers, and one of them was Dick Brandt. Dick Brandt came up to Newton and started KCOB Radio.
Wow.
And so I always say, that Dick Brandt came from Cape Girardeau and started it in his connection to Rush Limbaugh. And many years ago, when I was working in Waterloo, I don't know, prep sheets and networking sheets and things like that, someone had posted the phone number for Rush's mom, Millie.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? Rush was coming on strong. People were just really getting to know who Rush Limbaugh was. And the person said, if you call her, be nice. She's a nice lady. So I called her, and she was very, very nice. Well, after Dick Brandt, who owned KCOB, died, his wife Edna moved back to Cape Girardeau. So while we were in a commercial break, I said to Millie Limbaugh, I said, do you know Edna Brandt? And she goes, Heavens, yes. I played bridge with her just last week. So it's a small world.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, I'm just trying to think of other people that I wrote letters to, and one of them, Sonny Bono, I had to run in with him. Ted Kennedy.
Oh, really?
Ran in with him. And I think every president since I at least got into radio, I met all of them, and there were some funny stories about several of them.
Before we wrap this up, I want to thank you very much because, as you might remember, actually I had seen you and known of you for a long, long time, but I sent you an email, and I was having a rough time at the radio station, and you met with me, and we both went and had salad bar.
Yeah, we had that circular salad bar that never ended.
I know, it was great. But you taught me a prayer, and I printed it out in big letters and put it on my desk at the radio station. Show me, tell me, send me.
Yeah.
And that's my prayer every day.
Well, and I do that now. I've always done that, but especially now that I'm retired, God, show me, I'm here for you. Show me what you got. Tell me what to do, and send me out to do it. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how much value that gives you of your life to think you're not just doing stuff nilly-willy. And a lot of, when I say that prayer, when I first started saying it, I wanted to hear God's voice audibly. Okay, Van, today you're going to, you don't get that. What you get put into certain situations that you never would have expected, and it's like, yeah, that's what this is all about.
Right. It was supposed to happen that
Yeah.
way. Exactly. The book is called Jesus the Prequel. You can order it at vanharden.com.
Yep.
Check it out, or head to one of Van's book signing ceremonies. Van,
And
thank you so much.
The other thing is, if you're not sure about this book, what I did was on my website, I read the first chapter.
Oh.
So you can go to vanharden.com and you can click and you can hear and see if that sounds like that's something you're interested in.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
That's a little intro into the book.
Yeah.
Thanks again for talking
You
with
bet.
me today. The one and only Van Harden, folks. This podcast also sponsored by Newton Clinic. It's that time of year again. It's American Heart Month. Heart disease is the leading cause of death in America. So Newton Clinic's here to raise awareness and assure you that the Newton Clinic is here for you and your heart health. Call 641-792-2112 to make an appointment. 641-792-2112 at Newton Clinic. Also sponsored by Lynette Baker, Halo Branded Solutions Representative, Westside Java Coffee Bar, and the gang at Advantage Credit Union.
My bank is always charging me fees.
My loan rates are through the roof.
Sound like someone you know? You should tell them it's time to break up with their bank and find a much better match. Advantage Credit Union offers great rates, no minimum checking balance, and no monthly service fees. Plus, refer a friend to ACU this February for a chance to win a 55-inch Samsung TV.
I found my happily ever after with Advantage Credit Union.
No purchase payment or donation required to win. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details. Federally insured by NCUA.
Until next time, out is out. See ya.